Sign up for YouTube Premium and get ad-free videos and music. Try it today. Sign up for YouTube Premium and get ad-free videos and music. Try it today. Sign up for YouTube Premium and get ad-free videos and music. Try it today. Sign up for YouTube Premium and get ad-free videos and music. Try it today. Sign up for YouTube Premium and get ad-free videos and music. Try it today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we welcome you to our annual Black History event. We welcome you in His presence as we celebrate the presence of Black people in the Bible. Good afternoon, everyone. Back is our spiritual guide. Today we welcome you to our annual Black Archaeology, History. We welcome you in His biology, physics, as we celebrate the presence of Black event in the Bible. Good afternoon, everyone. Back from Genesis to Revelation, there is proof that Blacks were present in the Bible. You will not read the term Black or African in the Bible, but you will read Ethiopian, Cushite, Hebrew, or other tribal terms. Studying Black presence in the Bible can lead to discussions about racial justice, as well as an understanding of how Black people in the Bible have always played a central role in God's plan for humanity, and that they were not an inferior people, nor an afterthought by God. Welcome and enjoy. You might not have known they were Black. Zipporah. Moses married an Ethiopian woman, Zipporah, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. Numbers 12, verse 1. Nimrod. Nimrod was Ham's grandson, and he was the first ruler of human government according to the scripture. The Bible indicates that Nimrod was the first king in human history, and he ruled mankind from the Tower of Babel after the flood of Noah. The world leaned on his hunting prowess for food after the deluge, when animals began migrating back to their natural habitats. Nimrod the Great became a mighty hunter before the Lord. Asnet. She was a daughter of an African priest who named her after a Black goddess the Greeks renamed Minerva. Asnet was a high-born, aristocratic Egyptian woman. She was a wife of Joseph and the mother of his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Tirhakah. Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia, waged war against Sennacherib during the reign of King Hezekiah of Judah, 2 Kings 19:9 and Isaiah 37:9, and drove him from his intention of destroying Jerusalem and deporting its inhabitants. God used his African king to protect the Jews, his chosen people. Simon the Canaanite. He was obvious to the only Black apostle of Jesus Christ. He converted to the nation of Israel to become a Jew to the article of circumcision. Simon of Cyrene. The only race that did not willingly participate in the capital murder of Jesus was Black. However, Simon of Cyrene had the cross of the Son of God slammed on his back by a European guard and was forced to carry the cross of humanity's shame the rest of the way to the crucifixion. Then there's Pharaoh. He was from a line of kings that predated any nation of Europe. They are known as pharaohs, which means sun kings, and they ruled the land Ham known as Egypt. Psalm 105, verse 27. Pharaoh was the king of North Africa who said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" The Queen of Sheba. The first use in the Bible of the word queen refers to a Black woman. 1 Kings 10, verse 1. Her name is alleged to be Makeda, but the scriptures refer to her as the Queen of Sheba or the Queen of the South. Her fame was such that 2,000 years after her death, Jesus Christ mentioned her long trip and referred to her challenge of Solomon's wisdom. The stories of the Bible took place in and around what we now call the Middle East. The vast majority of the world's ethnic and racial groups are not specifically identified, but some of those who were identified were Black. Both the New and Old Testament contain ample evidence of the Black presence. Acts 8 tells the story of the Ethiopian eunuch, one of the first Gentiles to be baptized. He came from a Black region, so he may have been Black. In Acts 13, we read of Simeon called Niger, the Latin term for Black. But either way, what we know is that the Bible teaches that God made all people, male, female, Black, white, red, yellow, and brown. They are all God's children and made in the image of God. All can have salvation through Jesus Christ. Enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. It's time for opening prayer. Let us bow our heads. Father God, we're grateful to you again for another Sabbath day. We thank you, Lord, for this privilege that's ours to come together to celebrate this evening Black History program. We invite the presence of your Holy Spirit. Help us, Father, to recognize the great contributions that your people have made to enhance your cause. We thank you for those who are on this platform, those who are listening on various platforms. We pray that as a result of being a part of this program this evening, we will discover more of your love for us, more of your concern for our salvation. And so we place all those who have a part to play in this program under your care, under your watch. We ask for wisdom for them. And we pray in the end, Father, that all that is done, all that is said, all the information that are gathered, may it all lead to you and bring honor to you as our Creator, as our Redeemer, and as our King. These mercies we ask in Jesus' name and for his mercy's sake. Amen. Amen. All right. It is my esteemed honor and privilege to present a moderator for a Black History program this evening in the person of Dr. Judith Ray McCullough. Dr. McCullough is a clinical psychologist in private practice in South Miami. She specializes in the use of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to treat depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders in adults. Dr. McCullough received her PhD in clinical psychology with an emphasis in health psychology from the University of Miami. Prior to starting a private practice, Dr. McCullough was employed in the UM Psychology Department for over 21 years as a clinical psychologist, where she was a faculty member and an assistant director of the Psychological Services Center. During her years at UM, Dr. McCullough provided psychotherapy to numerous clients with depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders. As a health psychologist, Dr. McCullough often treats clients with depression and/or anxiety because of the serious medical diagnosis or living with chronic medical condition. In addition, she has a special interest in helping clients develop healthy lifestyle skills. She has conducted numerous workshops and presented for adults and adolescents on topics such as promoting health lifestyle, emotional eating, stress management, dealing with depression, and improving communication within family. She regularly does presentation on improving marriages. If you can recall, she was one of our contributors to our under construction project here at the Perrine Church, and we certainly benefited from her experience. Dr. McCullough is originally from the island of St. Thomas. She's a Centomian in the United States Virgin Islands. She received her BS in Science, in Behavioral Science from Andrews University, and her MS and PhD from the University of Miami. She's married to Dr. Leewood McCullough, an optometrist. They have one child, Dr. Derek McCullough, a pediatric resident at Loma Linda University Children's Hospital. He also is married to the former Jen Lee Douglas. They have one daughter, Shayla, which makes Dr. McCullough a very proud grandmother. Dr. McCullough is a member of the Temple Seventh Adventist Church in Miami / Perrine Seventh Adventist Church in Miami, where she's a health ministry leader and a collegiate Sabbath school teacher. Her hobbies include cooking, reading, gardening, and traveling with her family. This is the tip of the iceberg as far as Dr. McCullough's credentials are concerned. And this is not foreign to her. She's done this many times for us, and we certainly appreciate her being a moderator for this evening's program. I want to welcome her to our program, and I ask for her your prayerful and undivided attention, Dr. Judith Ray McCullough. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do want to make a few corrections. Since the last time we spoke, since last year, I am now a member of Tabernacle SDA Church.
Okay.
And I am a grandmother ×2 now. Derek now has 2 daughters.
Okay.
So see, things are always changing. Things are always changing. You know, I have to say, I thought last year was the grand finale, so I was pleasantly surprised to get the call saying they'd like me to host again. You guys, you've had me on so long, I guess it's a tradition now. And I am pleased to be the one kicking off the 2nd decade of Black history. So without further ado, I say let's get started. We're going to have Perrine SDA School. They're going to do the American National Anthem, the Black National Anthem, and also a poem. So we're ready for that.
Oh, say, can you see by the night's early light of so gladly we hailed at the twilight
Injustice is Everywhere by Elijah Williams. Injustice is everywhere. It is more pronounced in the United States. It is quite scared to be hated. Who allows injustice to grow? Is it you? Is it me? Injustice is everywhere. Some people judge color at first sight, but like Michael Jackson said, it doesn't matter if you're black or white. Injustice brings sadness, anger, bitterness and fear, teasing, bullying never ending. It's sad it continues trending. Injustice is everywhere. Most police treat blacks unfairly. They keep men hanging onto their lives barely. Imagine if life was fair. How much more can we bear? Injustice is everywhere. In modern days, protesting is back because believed they'll have the mercy they lack. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Freddie Gray, they're no longer here. Injustice is everywhere.
Thank you so much, Elijah, for that inspirational poem. It is true that injustice is everywhere. And I really want to thank the Perrine SDA School for those for the singing of the anthems. They did an outstanding job as usual. Tying into the whole idea of injustice being everywhere, something for us to think about is, why is there injustice everywhere? And that ties into this lack of love, lack of identification with other people who are different from you. And so for this program, I was introduced to a video called The Most Dangerous School in America. And it really talks about how one person can make a difference. And I want you guys to watch this video that we're going to show now. And at the end, I want you to tell me what struck you about this video. So I'm not going to give you any hints ahead of time. Just give this video your undivided attention and we'll talk afterwards.
Shortly after I walked into my new school, a huge fight broke out among the girls. After things were quickly under control, I immediately called a meeting in the school's auditorium to introduce myself. I started listing as forcefully as I could my expectations for their behavior when all of a sudden, a girl way in the back of the auditorium, she stood up and she said, "Miss, why do you keep calling this a school? This is not a school."
And the violence still was not subsiding. And we were getting more and more concerned.
Each day it gets scarier. Somebody that thought it was cute just started on fire. To the one day the kid said, "Leave me the bullet in your head."
Just said to me was that I have a bullet with your name on it. I know guns are rarely accessible in this neighborhood, so I don't think that it's unreasonable that he can get his hand on a gun and shoot me.
That was the first time that I woke up and said, "Linda, I don't know what you've done here, because your kids are going to be without a mother." And that scared me to death. Now, I really wasn't keen on nonviolent assembly programs for a violent school. They came in, they showed a film. I don't know where they got this film from, but it was a true reenactment of the Columbine school shooting. So I'm sitting there along with my staff, and we're absolutely horrified and scared to death when I heard this outburst of laughter, and I was shocked. And I said, "You gotta talk to me about why you're laughing at something so horrific." And one of the girls, in a sweet voice, she said, "Miss Wayman, do you really think that was something?" She said, "We see that every night on our block. That's nothing compared to what we see." I understood. I understood why there was so much violence, because the kids were in a deep state of despair. They were so traumatized by their own lives, they could not even feel for others. I knew the only way to turn this school around was to love those children for who they were.
You look great this morning, young people. I love to see you smiling. I love to see you happy. I want you to be happy today, tomorrow, and forever. And remember, young people, if nobody didn't tell you they loved you today, you remember I do, and I always will.
People would say to me, "How could you love children like that? Look at them." I had one particular student released from a juvenile facility that was assigned to my school my first year at Strawberry Mansion High School. He was so violent. His behavior, we could not control. After being suspended for beating up so many children, we didn't know what to do. So one day I said to him, "I'm going to sign you up for a program."
Anthony, let's go. This is my first time ever playing quarterback. I feel good. I stepped up today.
He was our star football player, leading us to a winning record of 8-0. We
They're just
won.
celebrating.
What are we, 10-0, 9-0? What are we? I think
We're undefeated.
Undefeated. First season ever. One day, while we were in conversation, he said, Mrs. Wayne, one day I'm going to the University of Pittsburgh. I said, have you ever been to the University of Pittsburgh? He said, no, I only saw it on television. As soon as I left my office, I called my counselor. I said, plan a trip to the University of Pittsburgh. She said, for how many students? I said, one. He graduated this coming June, and he was honored with a leadership award.
55 out of 92 senior students have been accepted into college. But for some, that's not enough. They can't afford the deposit fees guaranteeing their place, like senior Christine Holland.
If I had the $550 to go to Philadelphia University, I would go.
You know, I might not be able to get him into Harvard, but I can give him some hope. And God, don't underestimate the power of hope, because when children have hope, they can succeed.
4 years later, she was given a full scholarship by Philadelphia University. And so Wayman whispers once again what she used to say to all the kids.
And remember, if nobody told you they loved you today, no, I do. And I always will.
I love you too.
People going to tell you sometimes that you're nothing. People going to tell you can't get up, and you're going to say, yes, I can. And if nobody else expects for you to do so, I expect for you to do so. I just believe it's my calling. And I believe my whole life journey is for me to try to help them the best that I can. I truly believe that. When we are faced with unbelievable challenges, we must stop and ask ourselves, so what? Now what? What are we going to do about it? If you are standing in one spot, afraid about what would happen if you choose left over right, do yourself a favor. Do not worry about directional order. Just be sure to move. Move one step closer to fulfill that dream you have always had for yourself. Go get it. You got it. Because not taking a risk will only lead to regret. Time is ticking. Tick, tick, tick.
Well, now that you've seen the video, what stood out for you? The first time I saw it, I had a definite reaction, and I know you do too. So what stood out for you in this? If nobody answers, I'm going to start picking on people. So I'm going to pick on Keisha. All right, Keisha, you know that was coming.
The power of having someone who supports you, and even if nobody else will be able to support you, having the knowledge that someone will be there pushing you through, holding your hands, giving you all the help that you possibly can. I think that stood out so much, that, you know, we could do that. We could be that person helping someone, even if it's just encouraging them to be able to go forth and do what they need to do.
That's very good, Keisha. Exactly. Now, somebody else said what stood out for them was the children's reaction to the school shooting. For them, that wasn't a big deal because they were seeing it all the time. Like, why is everybody getting so emotional about that? That happens on a daily basis where I come from, you know? So when we, you know, as Christians, we are supposed to be God's presence here on earth. So we should be showing that love to others, you know? Anybody else who saw anything in the video that stood out for them?
Yes, it's in what you have been saying there, the impact of socialization on the children and what they come to at the school. And of course, you notice what the principal did later on in terms of the diversity, creating diversity. It might not seem to be much, but that diversity is critical to reaching these children.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other thought?
I think what struck me was her stick-to-itiveness, that she was willing to not quit. That was me the first day I got the threat, there's a bullet with my name, and I'd say, okay, we'll try
It would be bye-bye.
So I think, well, I don't know, but I think the fact that she was willing to throw herself into the mix and go the extra mile by starting to communicate on a one-to-one, not a one-to-one, communicate through an intercom, letting them know that there was real care and love for them. I think that was a starting point for the children, I think, because then it was easier for them to relate to her, and the fact that she was willing to work for them and with them, that allowed for them to go from one level to the next level. So yeah, her stick-to-itiveness, I think, was very impressive, because most of us would not have gone that extra mile.
That's so true. Harriet, I see your hand is up.
Yes, a few things was pointed out to me that impressed me, that what a difference somebody showing interest in you can make. Also, that the principal wasn't willing to give up on the kids. And because of that, they were willing to go forward.
Yes.
My point, what I got from it was, I see love in action from the beginning to the end. She showed love. And that's what most of us want, most youth, young people. They just want somebody to love them. And that's what she did. And she turned the whole thing around.
Yes, and we have a comment from Vonda. She says how hopeless they were and how one person could bring hope to the children. Sometimes we think that as an individual, we can't do anything. We can't make a change. But there is power in one person making a change. And so think about your environment. Think about, I don't know, your work, your school, your church, whatever in, your community, whatever group you're in. How can you as one person show love and make a difference? Yes. That's what I want you guys to think about, because, we're talking about Black history today, and many Black people will say, I don't think I can make a difference. This is bigger than me. But now we see that one Black woman in a school that everybody else had given up on was able to turn that school around. So there is hope. We just have to be willing to make that change, to, in a better sense, say, to be that change that we want to see around us. So at this time, we're going to have special music. And Keisha's comment was, nothing is impossible with God. Amen to that. Yes. So I'm just waiting for our special music to appear on the screen. Haven't gotten word otherwise. And so feel free to look this up and share it with others, because I think it's very powerful. And if we all can raise our awareness, I think we can all make a difference.
Sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. I look over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming forth to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming forth to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming to, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home.
Thank you so much, Maya and Samantha. It was an excellent job. Wonderful song, lovely harmony. Yes, one of these days I'll be singing like that. Now we are getting ready for our presentation for the evening. Now I want to do a little bit of introduction. The presenter is, of course, my husband of almost 40 years. So I do want to acknowledge him. He is the optometrist that was mentioned earlier. And when I was in graduate school, I got a scholarship, and the scholarship was put on by a group that promoted minority involvement in higher education. And they would have meetings every year, and they would talk about the Black experience and give us Black history lessons. And my husband would come with me. And that sparked his interest in this field, in this area. And so he has done a lot of research in this area. And so I am pleased to share with you my husband's presentation on his views of the Black presence in the Bible. And it's entitled Black Like Us. So I know that he's also going to have periods where he's going to ask you questions. And so just like you did with me, feel free to jump in, answer his questions. And I know that you will find this to be a very enjoyable presentation. So Len, the floor is yours. Or should I say, Dr. McCalla, the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. I am, since I'm screen sharing, I can't see your faces. I can't see if you're responding. I'm hoping so. And if you can't hear me, I hope my wife will come in and tell me. We're in different rooms at the time, broadcasting. But my title of my presentation is Black Like Us. I'm going to delve into some of the historical African figures in the Bible and deal with a little bit about our history. One of the things I realized, can you hear me? As a young man growing up, I moved here when I was 10 years old. There weren't very many figures to look up to. There wasn't a Black doctor that I knew personally here in Miami. There were some I knew in Jamaica, but none here. And a lot of the images I saw were not very good. So it started me on a search for historical Black figures in American history and also African history. And then I also translated that into the Bible because, again, in the Bible, the only people I knew about that were Black people that were mentioned was Zipporah, Moses' wife, and the Ethiopian eunuch. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of them today, and hopefully that will whet your appetite and we can move forward. I have about 30 minutes, and this is, I'm going to go fast because I think it, excuse me, I think it's going to require that. One thing I don't want to do, though, I don't want this to be something that people use to be anti-European or anti-white. It's for us to develop stronger characters, a stronger self-confidence, and we should love everyone. Love like rain does not choose the blade of grass on which it falls. So we should not choose the person with which we extend love to. We should extend it to everyone. And kindness, even if you don't love them, you should show kindness. Kindness is a language which the blind can see and the deaf can hear. So remember that. Has Africa contributed anything significant to the world? Growing up as a young man, I was led to believe they didn't. Are African people represented in the Bible? Growing up as a young man, I was led to believe that they didn't. Years ago, I remember Muhammad Ali asking this question. He says, my name is Clay, that's a slave name. Why is your name such and such? Why is my name Makala? Is it, are we not proud of who we are? So he changed his name. But I've discovered one of the things, even though I have the name Makala, I can change my way of thinking. I can change my mind in such a way, or reinforce my mind with things that are good images and that would lead to good characters and will help my race and everyone else, the human race, develop and become better people. And so that is one of the things that prompted me into doing this. People without the knowledge of their past history, origin and culture is like a tree without roots. So we need to do this also for our young people. If we develop great roots for them, they will excel and they'll do better and they'll flourish. If we don't do that, they're going to wither and die. Let's talk about our purpose today: to educate those who've been separated from their history by informing them with accurate historical information, to empower them with confidence and pride in their heritage, and to inspire them to be a life of service and greatness. Questions I have, I'm going to deal with. Are there African characters in the Bible? And most of us will say yes. Are the African characters portrayed in a positive manner? And for the most part, most will say yes. Was Noah's son Ham African? Were Black people cursed in the Bible? Did Africans play a role in the Bible at all? When did Africans learn about Christianity? Was it before or after slavery? More questions than answers. Does biblical ethnicity matter? Does it matter who they were, whether it's African, European, or does that really matter? What are the implications for evangelism if we teach ethnicity? Does teaching African biblical history to our youth help to keep them from leaving the church? Is teaching them about ethnicity a part of preaching the whole gospel? If we're going to teach the whole gospel, shouldn't we teach also part of that also? And lastly, does teaching biblical ethnicity help to reduce racism? And so those are questions I want you to ponder. I don't know if I'll have time. Initially, I want you to answer those questions, but I'm going to move on, and maybe if we have time, we'll come back and answer some of those. The youth can walk faster, but it's the elder that knows the road. So we as elders, we know what's ahead, we know the road, and it's our job to prepare them and to guide you young people in a way that will fortify them for the world that they're going to face. Right now, they're trying to remove accurate American history from the classrooms now. You can't talk about slavery. You can't, even though these things happen, you can't talk about this thing because it will make somebody feel bad. It's one of those things that we see the world changing, and it's changing rapidly. So we need to be aware of it and fortify our youth. The Bible is Black history. If you didn't know that, now you will. It's a history of everyone. All of us are included in it, but especially Black history. We are part of it, and I want you to understand that. Let's talk about Noah. After coming out of the flood, Noah and his family, he had 3 sons that populated the world. They were Shem, the dusky or olive one, that's considered the Semite. Then we had the Ham, or the darker one, which is the Africans. The Semites are meaning the Jewish people. And lastly, we have Japheth, the bright or fair one, which is considered the Europeans. And And out of these, they were the races of men developed that populated the earth. Now, I came across this in doing my research, and this is a genetic scheme. It's designed to show you how Black parents could come up with eventually come up with very European, very fair-skinned children. The problem with this, it's completely wrong. It's not accurate because there's other components. There are other components. There are really 3 different types of components that would affect your skin color. So if you see something like this, this is misleading. It's not the way it really truly is. And so I don't want people to get caught up in those types of things. In the long run, it's not so much the color lines. The color lines are meaningless. Our skin color is the result of many, many different genes which work together in different combinations to produce different colors of skin. Many of these genes are shared across racial, cultural, and geographic boundaries. So you may have somebody with similar gene and they may not express it. It may not come out. So they both may have the same gene. That's why when we do these DNA tests, you find out you have this in you and you didn't know you had this in you, because you can't always look at someone and tell. You know, somebody can be darker than I am and have more European in them, and somebody can be lighter than me and have more African in them than I have. So it's amazing how that will work. So you can't, but since we have created this thing about skin color, we'll deal a little bit with that. So let's talk about Shem. So we talked Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem, the Persians, the Syrians, the Lydians, and the Syrians came from that group of people. And the sons were Elam, Asher, Lud, and Aram. I'm not going to do much with them. This is Japheth, the Caucasians, the Cimmerians, the Europeans, the Medians, the Grecians, the Russians, the Thracians, the Germans, and the Spaniards. All of these groups of people, the Thracians, by the way, are a group in Russia. In any case, in Greece, I'm sorry, and Cimmerians in Russia. But with all of these different groups of people, we're not going to deal specifically with them. I want to deal with our line. Most of us are of African, predominantly African descent. And so that's why I'm dealing with it. Cush, he was a son, and out of Cush came the Ethiopians. Out of Mizraim, the Egyptians. Out of Put, the Libyans, and Canaan, the Canaanites. Now, Canaan was cursed, not his descendants. You've heard that before, that some people use would say years ago, they justified slavery by saying Ham was cursed. Ham was never cursed. If you go and read the Bible, read Genesis 9:20-29, and you'll see the story. It was Canaan that was cursed, and he was cursed by Noah, and because of what he had done. And I won't go into the story now, but these are his descendants, some of the tribes that came out of Canaan, and a lot of them they have people in them that serve God and worship the true God. In any group of people, you're going to find people who are like that. So no matter the race or the group of people, you can't just cast one aside. There's got to be somebody in general who will be doing their best to serve God in that group. Now, I'll just show you briefly. If you look here, Canaan, if you can see can you see my pointer? I hope you can. You can see my arrow. Canaan this is the area here of Canaan, and this is the Middle East. This is where Israel is, Jordan, Syria, all of that in this area. Cush down here in Ethiopia in the lower right-hand corner, that's where the Cush people settled, the descendants of Cush, and the darker people. Mizraim is in Egypt. So Mizraim is in Egypt, and Put is in Libya. Now, interestingly, they talk about Canaan, Mizraim, and Cush, but the Bible doesn't speak much more about Put after it just mentions who they are. It does not say a whole lot more about them after that. Let's move on now. And modern day map, you'll see who they are again: Ethiopia, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Israel. That area is the Middle East that we deal with, and even over to Iraq and Turkey, where you have people, where Nimrod was. And this is a listing of some of the tribes. Again, I want to point out that from Canaan, you have the Amorites, the Hittites, the Havites. Many of these were people that were settled in Canaan, and these are the people that the majority of the time the Israelites were fighting against, those from Canaan. And Canaan, one of the curses was that because of what Canaan had done, that his brothers' children his brothers' descendants would take their land. And so that's part of one of the things you see today, that some of the land that is Israel, and they're fighting back and forth to still keep some of that land. And that's one of the reasons you see the fights that we still have today between the Jews and the Arabs going on. And the Philistines, you'll see they're from Mizraim, and which is the area of Egypt. And they're also a tribe I always thought were very, very violent, and I always had a bad impression of them, but it turns out they weren't all as bad as we think. They were actually pretty decent. Now, I hear somebody say that we're getting back the feedback, so I tried using headphones, and maybe that will work better. It will cut the feedback. Now, let's move on. Nimrod, she talked a little bit about Nimrod, so I wouldn't say much about him. He was a mighty hunter, a community activist, and a liberator. And Nimrod built kingdoms. So he was the person who started Babel and Nineveh and so forth. But I'm not going to deal much on him other than he's known for trying to help people. Although when they built the tower towards heaven, that was something that God did not want to confuse the language. Zipporah, again, we'll talk about her. Zipporah was the wife of Moses, whose father was a Midianite. Now, if he's a Midianite, that means actually the line of Shem. He's actually a Hebrew, and he taught Moses a lot of things about the Hebrews while Moses was there with him in the desert. So did Moses have a second wife? In the Bible, it says further on down in Numbers 12, 1-15, it says Moses' wife was a Cushite. So if her family is Midianite, how did she become a Cushite? How do we explain that? I'm not sure. Perhaps he did have a second wife. Perhaps his wife, Moses' father-in-law or Moses' mother-in-law may have been a Cushite. I don't know that for a fact, but it does say that she was a Cushite further down. So in any case, she was cursed. And one of the things I like about her reaction, she had none. She could have lashed out. She could have said all the worst things about, because she was right. They spoke evil against her, but it doesn't record her saying anything. So I admire her for that. And now Rahab, a prostitute from the Canaanite city of Jericho. She hid the spies. You all probably know the story that she hid the spies that were coming to check on Jericho to find out if it was a city that they could take and what was in the city. And because she hid the spies from Israel, they promised to save her and her family if she just put a cord, a scarlet cord in the window. And so she did, and they spared her life. And guess what? She ended up being in the line of an ancestor of David. So David and Solomon came out of Rahab, a prostitute. What is interesting to me about her life as and she's an African woman, a black woman, is that she believed in God. She saw what was happening, how blessed the Israelites were, and she believed in their God, and she followed through in her belief and acted on it, which is very, very commendable. So it's that, hopefully that is something we can learn from. I'm hoping that we do some of the feedback. Some people said we are getting feedback. I hope not. All right, and now my screen is not moving now. There we are, I went too far. Okay. right. Next would have Delilah. Delilah, a Philistine woman from the bloodline of Mizraim. Samson was attracted to her beauty. Eventually got him to confess the secret to his strength, which was his unshaven locks. The Philistines early, I've always looked at them, like I said, as bad people, as evil people, as not godly, but they were actually righteous people. If you remember Abraham and Sarah, Abraham went to the Philistines and he told Sarah, who was his half-sister, to tell them that she wasn't his wife, that she was his sister. And the king took her because she thought she was beautiful for his wife. And God was going to kill and destroy the people because of that evil. And he said to God, why would you destroy righteous people? I did not do anything wrong. And so God came to him in a dream, and that's his conversation with God. And God told him that this was what happened. And he went back to Abraham and said, you told me that this was your sister's, your wife. Here, take her. And so he was a person who was a righteous person. So Delilah came from a group of people who were righteous, and somehow along the way, groups of them fell or faltered in their following of God, and eventually came down to her generation, and she continued that bad habit. Goliath now is a descendant of Israel, which is an area around Egypt. He was a giant Philistine warrior who terrified Israel with his size, his physique, and his extraordinary physical ability. And of course, he was defeated and killed by David, the shepherd boy. If you look at Goliath, in today's standards, he would still be a bad boy. He'd be a bad man, as they say. A huge guy. He was at least 9 feet tall, 9 feet 6 inches, almost 10 feet tall. And he was just so powerful. What can we learn from Goliath? Goliath was a bully. He did things that he should not have done, use his size and his strength to try to bully other people. And God cut him down to size. And so if we are like that, if we start mistreating people for whatever reason, it will create a situation where God will step in and probably bring us down to size. Now, my next one here, Bathsheba. Uriah the Hittite. Bathsheba was an elite warrior, loyal to King David. So his wife was Bathsheba. And while he was in battle, while he was out fighting, the king saw him, David saw her and wanted her for his wife. And he ended up having relations with her. She became pregnant, although she was still married to Uriah. And so he brought Uriah back, trying to hide the situation. So he'd go and have relations with his wife, and that they would that he would think it was his son, that Uriah would think that the child was born would be his child, son or daughter. In any case, Uriah refused to go because he was thinking about the battle and what job he had to do, and he was given a job to do, and he wanted to make sure he focused on that. Anyway, so King David sent Uriah into battle with a note and told the rest of the troops to withdraw and leave him out on the front by himself, and he was killed. And because of that, the Lord caused her to lose the child. But eventually, God blessed them. They were both repentant of what had been done, what they had done. And eventually, God blessed them, and she became the mother of King Solomon, the wisest one that we know. We think of anybody wise, we think of Solomon. Interesting lesson from this. She had, and both of those had committed adultery, and they end up getting married. And the Lord still forgave them and blessed them, because that's what, and because they had a penitent heart. So we as church members need to sometimes do the same thing. Sometimes we get into a thing, well, this person committed adultery and they can't serve in office, they can't do this and they can't do that. And sometimes we have to look at these other stories and see what happened in the Bible, what truly happened. And did God forgive them? Yes, he did. Can we forgive also? We should. Okay, now I'll talk briefly about Solomon. I have only about 15 minutes left. He's the wisest man that ever lived, and he requested wisdom from the Lord. He wrote a lot of the Bible, the Proverbs especially. During his reign, Israel prospered greatly and her most glorious time. He was a descendant of Rahab, the Canaanite, the harlot, and to which his lineage can be traced. And the interesting thing about Solomon is that that they believe that that's how the darker skinned people in Ethiopia, the Africans, became Hebrews. We'll talk about that. Let me just move on first to the next one, and then the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba was a queen in the area called Ethiopia, and she heard about the wisdom of Solomon, and she traveled there to meet him and see for herself about this marvelous kingdom and this brilliant ruler. And so she went there to meet him. Eventually, they did have a child, and when they had a child, she traveled back to her kingdom, and the child grew up, as the story goes. And this is coming from the Keber Nagast, which is supposedly, this is what the Rastas use as a Bible, Rastas in Jamaica. And it's a scrolls that were found in years ago in America, in Ethiopia, and they were translated, and that's where they get these stories from. Now, true or not, as far as how it happened, Jewish people traveled to Ethiopia, and there was a congregation or group started there. And that's where you have the Ethiopian Jewish lineage. And yes, the Rastas were right. They were in Ethiopia, and that lineage went all the way down to Haile Selassie at the who was the last one of the Solomonic dynasty. But they call them Beta Israel. That's a modern term for them now. They've also become called Falashas. Falashas means that they're strangers or exiles, because the Ethiopians looked at these people as a little different. They were strangers or exiles. They weren't part of them. And in fact, they did not treat them well. They weren't allowed to have, at one point, they stopped them. They were treated them well initially, but towards the last, I would say the last 80 to 100 years, when Ethiopia changed rulers, at one point they took away their land, and they could not own land, and they had to work for others. And they were denounced by many people as they are not being true Jews. Although they worshiped the same style as the Jews did in Solomon's day, they still had the same worship style, and they did not change. Modern Jews have changed their worship, but these Jews in Ethiopia did not change. So guess what? DNA testing wasn't around there. When DNA testing finally came out, and they were proven genetically that they were Jews. And in 1984, when there was unrest in Ethiopia and the Falashas were in danger of being killed, Israel, because the DNA test proved that who they were, conducted an emergency airlift to rescue them. And it's called Operation Moses. You can go and look it up. And then they had another one after that, Operation Solomon. And in 1991, they had the last one, which is Operation, I just had to blank on the name. It'll come to me in a minute. But as Moses, Solomon, and Joshua, those were the three instances where they rescued them. So I could talk about the genealogy of Jesus, but if you just go and read it for yourself, you see he has both Hamitic and Semitic roots, meaning that he has all of the people from Rahab all the way down. Those are from Ham, and from Shem, the Semitic, He has some of those too. So there's a mixture of both. So Jesus is not just really one race, or they put him in a family with Joseph. That family is not just one race, it's a mixture. So we don't know, we can't say for sure Jesus was Hamitic and Semitic or whatever he was, but we know that his family was of that group, okay? And let's move on. She talked about Simon of Cyrene, so I wouldn't talk about him. Simon the Apostle. There are two Simons in the New Testament. The reason I wanted to touch on this because we have it Old Testament mainly, and I've done some New Testament. Simon, one of the 12 apostles, is described as a Canaanite. A Canaanite again is someone who is of African blood. He's described as Simon the Zealot, and because he was the Zealots were groups of people who wanted to keep the Romans out of Palestine by armed revolution, by fighting them. And after he became acquainted with the Messiah, he changed his views. He stopped being such a warlike person and embraced the character of our Savior. So that's Simon of the Apostle, and Philip the Nubian. Philip discovered the Ethiopian eunuch reading the scriptures, and the Nubian was from Ethiopia, and he worked for Candace. Now, if you know the treasurer, if you are the treasurer, you have to be an educated man. He was reading the scriptures, so that shows he was educated, but he did not understand about Jesus and the Savior's sacrifice. And he asked Philip to explain to him. And when Philip explained the good news about Jesus Christ to him, he immediately, when they came to a body of water, asked to be baptized. And why was that so? Because he had the African experience of understanding the scriptures. That's something that they dealt with for years. And so it wasn't uncommon for him to see the scriptures and read the scriptures. It's just that he didn't understand certain parts of it. And then when that was explained to him, it all became clear, and he immediately decided to be baptized. And that's something that we all can learn from. So Philip the Nubian, and just touch on before we finish up, Africa has some Sabbath roots, and I have about 2 more minutes left, but I think you all really would want to hear this. How did Judaism come to Ethiopia? How did Christianity arrive in Ethiopia? Was Sabbath keeping in West Africa learned from the Europeans? I answered the first 2 questions already. Judaism came through Solomon and the Queen of Sheba and people migrating there to Ethiopia. Christianity arrived in Ethiopia because of that eunuch, the Nubian eunuch. So that's how the Christianity started. And interestingly, Ethiopia has been the longest Christian nation worshiping Christ continuously than any other nation in the world. Most people don't realize that. And also they've had a long history of Judaism there that goes back like centuries. So they've had both those things in the hills there, in the mountains, that are pretty difficult or impenetrable, because Mussolini during World War II tried to conquer that country and he couldn't because the mountains were too hard. You can't take a tank up a mountain. So they were stuck at the foothills and they couldn't go up into the mountains and conquer them. So though they have not changed their styles of worship, if you go back and look, both Christianity and Judaism have been there for many, many, many years like that, centuries really. Okay, let's move on. Asian Africans were Sabbath keepers. We can go back to Nimrod. He was described as a mighty hunter before the Lord. But when he said before the Lord, that means it seems like he was, the Lord approved of him at that time. And then before we got into the case where he had to confuse the language. So at one point, Nimrod was in very good standing with the Lord. The Falashas of Ethiopia, I talked about the Beta Israel. They worship. And here the airlifts in 1984 and 1985, Operation Moses, Operation Joshua, and Operation Solomon. Here's a picture from that. Thousands were rescued. They set the world record of having 1,122 passengers on one single plane. They took the seats out of the plane and they literally just had packed the plane because they had to get them out within 2 days. And were just trying to save lives. So they pulled the seats out and just sent the plane in and had them come in and sit down and flew them out. Something that we would not do today in modern day, probably unlikely we would do something like that. But that's what happened. So many of us who have lived, were alive at that time, will remember some of this happening. This is how they worship, men on one side, women on the other, women and children on the other, just as they did the Jews did years ago. And this is a picture of Africa where the reason I have this here, I wanted to show you that the British, these countries, this is Ghana over here, and this one it's Nigeria. And I'm just going to touch briefly on those two countries. The Yoruba people in Nigeria, the Yoruba people observe the 7th day of the week by not working. They don't conduct weddings. They don't have festivals. It is a forbidden day. And if you, at one point in their history, if you broke that law, they could put you to death. So they enforced a day of rest on the Sabbath day. So there was some observance of Sabbath, even if they may have not done it for the right reason or understood why they were doing it, that has carried over to the Yoruba in Nigeria. And in Ghana, where you have two of the largest slave castles, and the reason I'm pointing out Ghana, and especially we have a lot of West Indians here, and a lot of from English-speaking Caribbean, and especially Jamaica. There's shanties. I'm circling it, the Shanty region here. That's where their kingdom was located. And a lot of the slaves that were taken to Jamaica and English-speaking Caribbean were from the Ashanti region. And if you look down here, you have Cape Coast Slave Castle and then Elmina Slave Castle. Those slave castles were there, and that's where most of the slaves came through, actually Cape Coast. Very few came through Elmina, because by the time Elmina was conquered by the British, most of slavery had ended, or they were stopping it. So Cape Coast was the one that most of them, they would pay those who lived on the coast to go into land and capture their shanties, because they wanted their shanties gold. The shanties had gold. But the interesting thing about the Akans or the Shanties, that we call the Shanties that tribe, but the Akans are the large group of tribes that come together. That's the name Akan. A large number of them, like I said, were very stubborn. And you remember the Maroons? The Maroons come from a region down here, right down by where the central area is, central region, if you see my thing, right down in here. And they came, and they were the ones, a town that's very stubborn. And even in that same little village right now, if you go back there, they say they don't like to be ruled, they don't like to be conquered, they like to be independent, just like our own Maroons in Jamaica. And some of us have Maroon heritage. I don't, but I know that we have members in the church who may have Maroon heritage. And they can be very proud of that. Now let's move to the next slide. I'm almost done. The Ghana, the Shanti have traditionally worshiped God as the supreme God. Their word for God is Jiname, Oyame. And they say Onya Kompon Kwame means God of Saturday. So they call Saturday, the day Saturday, their word for it is God of Saturday. That's their name. And for the people the white man who came to the Europeans, and they worshiped on Sunday, they call them Kwisi Brani, means Sunday white man, because they worship on Sunday. And Mark Finney has confirmed that. He's told the story at the 1999 Northeastern Conference Camp meeting that that's what they called him. And he said, no, I'm a Saturday white man, not a Sunday white man. But that they call all European Sunday white men because they worship on Saturday, the Sabbath. They kept the Sabbath. This is their word for Yahweh is Yahmeh, and Yahweh, the words are very similar linguistically. They have, and this is their king right now. I see all the jewelry and everything he works wearing, that's gold, that's real gold. They had a lot of gold in that part of Ghana. This is a golden stool that he sits on when he's becomes king. They have him sit on it one time and he's enthroned, and then he doesn't sit on it again. But in certain places, it's used as an altar to worship. And we'll talk about that. I have two more slides. The palace, the Achan have a palace, which has an outer room, an inner court, and a sacred room, kind of just like the temple. They have a sacred stone out front, which tells you that this is a palace and identified as a palace. They have a sacrificial system and blood atonement, where they actually will kill an animal and sprinkle the blood on the golden stool, which serves as a mercy seat. They've done that. And they have horn blowers. Horn blowers, a horn blower represents someone who's in power. So if someone like God would have the horn blowers, when they have a worship service, they're worshiping God, they will have horn blowers. When a king is coming, he will be preceded by horn blowers. And also they believe in dancing as a way to bring blessings down from God, which the Hebrews have a certain dance that we do also. So if they dance for a bountiful harvest, they dance for a successful hunt and a victory in war. So those are some of the things that they all have in common with the Hebrews at this time. Now, this is the symbol Gina made. If you ever see this black symbol here, it means if God didn't do it, who else can? And that's what they call a Dinka symbol used in Ghana. And it's everywhere because it's part of their character, their development. This dark area here on the map, you see, is where the languages are similar. All these languages are very similar, and even some of them down in this area. And the reason why language is important, because they have the same names for God, similar names for God. And that tells you that the message of Sabbath is not just in one little area of Africa. It has spread throughout the entire area of Africa. And the last thing, Africans were monotheistic from ancient times. Sabbath observance was a practice in Africa before the Europeans arrived there. The secular and the sacred are bound together in everything Africans do. There's no separation. It's part of their life, everything. You have a business, you name it God's computer business. Everything is part of one, the way they live their life. And we as Sabbath keepers can trace our worship of God back to Africa and to ancient times. Our history is intertwined with biblical history. Our history is biblical history. African proverb, an elder sitting on the ground can see further than a child in a tree. So again, we need to look out and see what's coming ahead and prepare our children for it. And lastly, when the rhythm of the drum changes, the dance steps must change. The rhythm of the drum is changing. Look around the world. Since COVID, things have changed. We cannot keep doing the same thing. We have to change what we are doing to continue to reach our children and prepare them for the future, both spiritually and in this world here. And if anybody wants to look quickly, these are some of the books that I use to do some of the research here. And thank you for allowing me to do this, and let me stop my share, and you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCalla, for that presentation. I know that people have questions. So I say, open it up for people who have questions or who have comments. Feel free to raise your hand and be recognized so that you can be able to address, any question that you have about this presentation on the Sabbath in Africa, and people in the Bible who are African, and any other aspect that he has discussed. I hope you're like me, you're taking down notes.
Or a comment. If you have a comment, it's fine.
Or if you have a comment, yes.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, happy Sabbath, everyone. Hi, Dr. McCalla.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Right, okay, so I have a friend. I haven't seen him now in many years, but he attended a high school in Jamaica with my brother. His name was Kwame Dunbar, and he was from Ghana. And your presentation confirms what he would tell us, that the Sabbath is big over there. They really honor the true God of the Sabbath, of the universe. and they practice a number of things that Sabbath keepers do on this side of the, of the Atlantic. So I'm just making the statement to say, of a fact, that does take place, and the Sabbath is a part of our heritage, going all the way back to the motherland. So to God be the glory.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Just an observation there, Doc, that it's very good now that of recent times we are having our Black history and the whole appreciation for what that nation or the Black race would have done, and also the contribution that we would have made. The fact is that we in this section of the world, and you mentioned Jamaica and so on, the type of education that we had, the Eurocentric education, tarnished our minds, and a lot of us were Black in skin but white in mind, and that was why people like Garvey was even ostracized by Du Bois, that type of thing. But it's good that at least our history is being opened up, and for one, I as an educator definitely open up a lot of these to the kids that I interact with, because unless they learn that and can appreciate that, they are doomed to make the same mistakes that our forefathers would have made.
Exactly. Excellent point. Anyone else? I don't know how much time she's giving me. And she said,
I'm giving you a few more minutes, like 5 more minutes.
They ration the time, Any other comments? Anything in the chat? Anybody will have anything? It's something, like I said, I've had an interest in personally, and I think it's fortified my mind against a lot of things I see out there. Things don't bother me anymore because I know who I am and what I'm all about. And so I am very, 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 have very strong beliefs that I think it would help our children if we taught them some of these things. And we weren't taught it, so we have to go and find it ourselves and learn it. But we need to do that as the leaders and help them to learn.
Just a very quick one there, Doc, on the Maroons also. It is
Yes.
said that a lot of Maroons that came to Jamaica, they were never enslaved. Immediately as they came, they ran away, and they were, I guess back in Africa, they were free, proud, fierce people. Immediately when they came to Jamaica, a lot of them ran to the hills. They were never enslaved.
True, very true. I see Brother Griffin has his hand up. Go ahead, Brother Griffin.
Wait, just very briefly, the presentation was well done. First of all, Dr. McCullough, very informative. I think for a presentation like this, however, we may need some more time to break it down and identify, areas of concern as you're going through.
Okay.
A lot of information to kind of fathom, and that, as I said before, it's well done, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So a possibility is to have him come to an AY program or do an AY program where he can answer just the questions.
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
Something in the, now, I don't know about your AY program, so I'm just throwing this out there. Don't put me under the bus because of this. But that's an idea where you can get the follow-up.
Great idea. It's a great
The
idea.
29th of February sounds good.
Okay.
So Dr. McCallum, you heard the 29th of February. Check your calendar.
Check your calendar, please.
Okay, so this was really an outstanding presentation. And I can't speak for the rest of you, but I know for me, I really learned a lot. And over the years, our trip to Ghana, thanks to Daniel, we went to Africa with Daniel. We went to Ghana, Togo, and Benin, and we learned a lot. a lot of history. Every day on the bus, we would learn history. That was one of the most amazing experiences. I don't know if Don is doing it anymore, but if he ever starts it up in the future, I would recommend make a beeline for the trip and really get to know your history. Because the thing is, if you're not proud of who you are, you cannot share that pride with your children. And then your children aren't proud of who they are. And that makes them more likely to get into trouble because they don't see that sense of self-pride, self-efficacy. So another outstanding one, I know this was a very different one from having a panel, but this way we're able to get all the information and now you can mull it over, prepare your questions, and apparently it will be February the 29th. You will have Dr. McCalla back to answer all of your questions. So at this time, I think we have another special music, and then we will have our closing activities with Vonda. Maya and Samantha will be singing for us once again.
Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. This grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years.
Back table. Shoot. A bad table, a bad table, a bad table. Thank you, thank you. Bad cable. I gotta replace that cable. But it sounds clean with no humming, right?
was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Okay, it's fine, but I have on the phone.
Thank you so much, Maya and Samantha. An excellent job as usual. Now we will have our closing activities by Vonda. Vonda, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So good to see you all today. All right, so we're going to end off with a quiz. So I need everyone to either talk in the chat, put your answers in the chat, and we're going to just review what you all have learned today. Can everyone hear me good? Okay, excellent. All right, so let me share my screen. All right. So Black presence in the Bible. Which son of Noah was considered to be the father of the Black race? Was it A, Japheth, B, Seth, C, Ham, D, Seth? Put your answer in the chat.
Oh, in the chat. Ham.
And somebody just ran with it.
Did I send that thing?
All right. And yes, it is Ham. Genesis 9:18, Genesis 10:6. All right, I am hearing a little feedback. If you can mute yourself, that would be great. So what was the ancient name of an area in Africa, Ethiopia, in the Bible called? So it had another name. All right. I got an answer of a couple of Cush, and that is correct. Cush, spelled with a K, is an ancient name for Ethiopia. All right. Who was the Midianite or Kishite woman who met Moses at a well? Hint, hint, he later married her. I see Alicia is fast on the trigger. Anyone else? Yes, Zipporah. If you guessed that, you guessed correctly. She was the wife of a Hittite who later married King David. Was it A, Dinah, B, Jochebed, C, Bathsheba, D, Sapphira? Yes, if you answered C, Bathsheba is correct. Boy, we've got some good people in that chat. Y'all are on it. Who helped Jesus carry his cross? A, Timnath, B, Simon of Cyrene, C, Naaman the leper, or D, Uzzah? All right, we see some fast people on the trigger in that chat. I see a lot of B's. That's correct. Simon of Cyrene. And then number 6, what prophet or teacher was called Niger? Was it A, Simeon, B, Saul, C, Stephen, D, Seth? I see some B, I see A, I see Simeon. If you guessed Simeon, you are correct. He was called the Niger. And then the Ethiopian Ocean was the former name of which ocean that we know today? That was one thing that I did not hear today about that, and it was very interesting that I learned it while putting this little quiz together. So the Ethiopian Ocean had a former name. I see some A's on there, some Pacific Oceans, people saying one's got the Indian, but you will be pleasantly surprised to know that it's the Atlantic Ocean. The 1710 Daniel de la, however you pronounce that last name, his map shows the Ethiopian Ocean where the Atlantic Ocean is today. So that was something great that I did not know before. And then what book of the Bible is dedicated to a Black woman? Was it A, Song of Solomon, B, Ruth, C, Job, or D, Philemon? And yes, the A's have it. It was Song of Solomon. What eunuch on the road from Jerusalem did Philip baptize? Was it A, Thomas, B, Saul, C, Judas, or D, the man of Ethiopia? I see those D's, D's, D's. Absolutely, it was the man of Ethiopia. And that concludes our little quiz. I think you all really learned a lot today and you knew a lot, and we appreciate you participating. I'm going to turn it back over to our MC.
Thank you, Vonda, for that quiz. And I knew everything except that river, that ocean question. I was like, well, Ethiopia is close to India. Let me go on that side.
Yep.
You know, that was a good trick, a good distraction answer. So kudos to you.
Thanks.
So I would like to thank everybody who participated in this program, from Sister Taylor to the Perrine students, Elijah for his poem, Maya and Samantha for their music, and finally Dr. McCalla for his outstanding presentation, Black Like Me, or Black Like Us, I should say, and Vonda for her quiz. It is very important for us that we celebrate Black history, since Black history is now under threat. You know what I mean. I don't have to get into it, but we have to remember that it's up to us to educate those around us. So I hope that you will continue to learn about Black history, to share your knowledge of Black history, and maybe we can turn something around in this country. I would like to then turn it over now to Elder Lokhtar, who will give the benediction of our program.
I would like to thank everyone who participated this evening. Sister Taylor, Elder Griffin, the president of the school, Lenny and Judy, great job. Know that this is going to be something that you'll keep doing forever. The invitation is open, so every year we will be calling you. Lenny, that was great information. I have been doing my own search on Black heritage, and there's a lot of information out there, information that was not there a long time ago. So it is time for us to really dig into it. There is so much rich history for the Black person, biblically and otherwise. I'd like to thank Maya and Samantha for the great song. the singing. Vanda, thank you so much for being a part of the program. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone, but Brother Roach, thank you for what you do in the background, and Brother Ganser, thank you so much for participating in the service. We thank God for giving us the opportunity to worship Him each and every Saturday. You know, and as a family, church family, we're hoping that we continue to grow spiritually into that place where you know, our worship, our love for each other will be such that those around us will see something special here at this church and the churches around, and we'll be a part of that family. Just like that teacher, she showed a little bit of love. She let everyone know in the school that someone cared about them. And the thing about it is that we have one who cares so much more, our Lord Jesus Christ. He cares about us so much so He sent His Son to die on the cross of Calvary. So thank you so much. Also, one last thing, I would like to thank Josiah Bailey for starting this so many years ago. You are special. Thank you for the Black History program that we've had for the last 20 plus years. Let us bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for bringing us here today. We thank you for being a part of our worship. Today, dear Father, we had Theo who spoke this morning. You know, our young people have so much talent, with that energy, dear Father, and we ask them that you allow us as a church to allow them to express that energy in the church, to be a constant part of our worship. Father, when we were here on earth, the disciples were very young men, and they took the message to the world. And as we're looking right now, we see that all around the world, the young men, the young women are reaching so many hundreds of thousands of people. Let us be a part of that movement, dear Father. We know it's the last days because you said that in the last days, there will be thousands and tens of thousands of people being baptized in one day. Dear Lord, we see it happening. So the end is near. We're almost home. And we thank you, Father, for letting us be a part of that wonderful experience. Again, dear Lord, we thank you for being our God, being our Father. Continue to bless us and help us to continue to worship you. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Again, thank you so much for being a part of the service. I pray that you have a wonderful week. Remember, on Wednesday evening, we will be having a prayer meeting. A praying church is a powerful church. Join our prayer meeting on Wednesday nights. Also, next Sabbath is Personal Ministry Sabbath. Our preacher will be Brother Castell. A lot of you know people will be participating in the service. Actually, join us on Zoom. Join us here in the church. Join us online and worship with us. Thank you again.